Hello crafty cuties, welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be making a card using the Sweet Succulents stamp set from My Favorite Things. But I really did want to kind of focus in on a few tips and tricks and how I like to use the Tim Holtz Distress inks, because I had a couple of you mention that you were really intimidated to use them, and so I thought I would show you two different ways that I like to use them in something like a card, and then you can take what I show you and use it on really any type of project. So let's go ahead and start with the background of our card, and I'm just going to use a sheet of mixed media paper here. You can use mixed media paper, you can use watercolor paper, or you can try using cardstock, which I have actually used with Distress inks. And as long as you're not smudging a ton, you will get a great result. So I am going to start out by actually embossing my sheet of paper. This is not necessary, this is just something that I am wanting to do for the card that I'm making. And my mixed media piece of paper measures 4.5 inches by 5 3/4. And so like I said, I'm just going to emboss this to give some texture to the paper. But feel free to skip this step and just start out with a flat piece of paper. And honestly, I kind of feel like that's probably the better way to practice, so you can just get a feel for the Distress inks first. So I am actually using a really cool embossing folder, and it's by We Are Memory Keepers, and it's called Next Level Geometric. And I think that's so cool. So I will set this stuff aside, and then we can grab our Distress inks. So let's talk about Distress inks. I'm going to be using mustard seed, spice marmalade, and picked raspberry for today's card. And I am going to stamp each of those colors onto my acrylic block. You can stamp these onto a piece of plastic, or you can also dip right into the stamp pad itself. So I'm using this little smudger here, and basically I'm going to start with the pink color, and I'm swirling the color on, and you can see that I am lightly adding color. I don't want to add too much, just because you can always add more and you can't take away. So when I want to move on to the next color, I don't actually wash my sponge in between, but depending what look you are going for, you can do that or you can skip it. And I basically spend a little bit extra time in between each color change to blend the colors together. And the colors blend together really, really nice. So I just keep adding colors until I am happy with the effect that I get. Not effect, but when I'm happy with how it looks. And so here it is, and you can really see that color nicely with the embossed image. I love that. So now I'm going to stamp my cactus image onto my mixed media paper. I'm using the archival ink just because I do plan to use the Distress inks to color this in, and I may be using water. So I'm just going to stamp the image once, and then I do it once again just so I can be sure to get the best stamped image, because I did smudge on the first one just a little bit there. And now I am going to color these in again with the Distress inks. I'm using picked grass, I think it's called, and I'm using the mustard seed, and then I'm using a turquoise color called Feathers. Sorry guys, I can't remember the names, but I'll have them all listed below. And I'm using my little detailer brush here. And you can see the color goes on really, really smooth. And as you can see, when I'm adding a little bit of the yellow or the blue, I just keep going over until I'm happy with how it blends together. So at any point that I feel like colors aren't blending together, or like I see brush strokes, I dip my brush back into my water and I just go back over that area and it smooths it out. So now I'm using picked raspberry for the little flowers, and then I use spice marmalade for the middles of the flowers. And if you are intimidated to use the Distress inks for colored images like this or stamped images like this, start out by doing backgrounds, because I think that's kind of where I got the best practice from, because honestly you can't mess up, guys, I promise. So now I'm just coloring in the pot with Vintage Photo and Brick Red. And you're going to see in a moment, I add some water droplets. Now I wipe it away, and I did not like that. I didn't like it on the pot, so I basically just added more ink, and you can just see how forgiving that was. And that was an honest mistake. I thought it was going to look kind of cool and weathered, but I didn't like it. So now I'm taking my sentiment and stamping it onto some vellum paper with the Versamark ink. I'm using this embossing powder by Recollections in Pesto. And I did get a little bit extra embossing powder around the edges, so I'm just kind of scraping that off with my finger, but you could use a brush or whatever. And now I'm just using my heating gun here to heat up the embossing powder, and you can see it gets super shiny and really pretty. I love that color. So now it is time to assemble the card. I have all of my pieces that I want, and now I'm using some foam tape for the back of this first panel. Now you guys have probably seen me use these colored card bases, that turquoise one right there, and I got those in a pack of 50 for like $2, and I find them to come in handy a bunch. So now I thought the foam tape would probably be the easiest way to kind of adhere this super 3D embossed piece. And I just thought I always like adding a little bit of dimension. So now I'm using this wood grain frame, and I just cut that frame out using my X-Acto knife, and I am just using some tape around the edges. And that wood grain paper is from a Dear Lizzie 6x6 pad, which again I'll have linked below for you guys if you're interested. There's some really cute prints in that stamp pad. And now I'm just kind of figuring out where I want to place everything. And for that vellum sentiment, I am using my tiny attacher, little stapler, to staple it onto just a scrap piece of paper. That scrap piece of paper is from the same collection. And I felt like that was honestly the easiest way to attach the vellum to another piece of paper, because it can be tricky knowing what glue to use. So here I am using some Recollections, I think it's called Chunk Glitter, and I thought it would be a really great addition to this card because it kind of looks like pieces of glass broken. And I'm just attaching those onto the card using some of my Tombow Mono Liquid Glue. And I'm going to finish this card off with some glossy accents and Wink of Stella. I didn't show that here, but I will show you some final clips where you can see everything. And I really hope that you guys found this video to be helpful. I hope that some of you who are intimidated to use distress inks would give it a try. And I strongly recommend buying the mini stamp ink pads in the 4-packs. Do you have any more questions about using the distress inks? Leave them down below and I will try and answer those right away. And thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to follow me on Instagram where you can see pictures and updates much sooner. And I love you guys so much, so I'll talk to you later. Bye!